Everyone says aging is a crisis. An economist just proved it's the most valuable resource we've ever had. For 50 years, the developed world's population looked like a pyramid. Wide at the bottom, narrow at the top. Lots of young people holding up a few old ones. That shape is gone. What's replacing it looks nothing like a pyramid. It looks like a cruise ship. 7 or 8 decks. Roughly the same number of cabins on every floor. 20-year-olds, 40-year-olds, 60-year-olds, 80-year-olds, almost identical counts all the way up. That's the single most important chart nobody shows you. And Andrew Scott's The Longevity Imperative is the only book I've read that treats it as good news. Scott is a professor at London Business School, fellow at Oxford's All Souls College, and co-author of The 100-Year Life. That book revealed how longer lives shatter the industrial age model. Learn, work, retire. This new volume completes the argument. It goes after something much bigger than career planning. It goes after the way you think about getting old. Part 1. The 2 numbers that decide your last 20 years. The good news: human life expectancy keeps climbing. In China, the average is now 78.2 years. A century ago, it was in the 30s. This is arguably humanity's greatest achievement, treated like a budget footnote. The bad news: health doesn't automatically stretch with life. English distinguishes the two. Lifespan is how long you live. Healthspan is how long you live well, the years you're still the author of your own day. Scott calls the gap between them the red zone. That's where you need care. You'll probably live to 78. Nobody can tell you how many of those years you'll still be yourself. If lifespan races ahead while healthspan stays flat, you don't get more life, you get a longer red zone. More people sick for longer at greater cost. Scott lays out 4 futures. Scenario 1. Lifespan climbs, healthspan doesn't. The red zone expands. Society buckles. This is the default. Scenario 2. Lifespan stops growing, healthspan extends. The red zone shrinks. Unrealistic. Scenario 3. Both grow and healthspan grows faster. The red zone becomes very short. Health slowly, die quickly. Almost everyone's actual wish. Scenario 4 is the Silicon Valley fantasy. Lifespan climbs and you age backwards. Immortality. Still far away. Scenario 3 is achievable right now. And that's where Scott's central idea emerges. He calls it Evergreen. Not anti-aging. A society where most people stay healthy deep into old age, and medicine shifts from treating disease to preventing it. Evergreen means helping as many people as possible live better, for longer. It requires answering 3 questions. First, do we have enough money for everyone to live longer, healthier? Second, across a 50-year career, will we actually be able to find work? Third, when many more older people remain in the workforce, what happens to the workplace? And what should young people do differently now? All are answerable. Part 2. The pyramid is dead. An evergreen society doesn't look like a pyramid. It's the cruise ship. Longer lives, fewer children, a shrinking total population, and more old than young. Each of these traits is reported as catastrophe. Each is also just a description of a society that got rich, got healthy, and stopped burying its children. How to age slowly, the personal protocol, isn't this book's focus. Outlive covers that. Wearables and genetic screening help, but you still need exercise, diet, and habits relentlessly maintained. The book asks a different question. If healthy aging becomes a society-wide goal, what else has to change? It starts by reframing the problem. What natural resource actually grows over time? Not oil, not lithium, older people. Healthy, long-lived older people. In an evergreen world, GDP grows because of a longevity dividend, not despite an aging population. Aging isn't a cost center. It's an asset class we've been writing off. To turn aging from negative to positive, 3 concepts must be rebuilt. Part 3. Retirement is not a date. Retirement is not an event. It's a process. A dimmer, not a switch, a gradual transition from full-time to part-time to less. This gradualism extends your working life, raises lifetime earnings, and keeps you healthier. Doing nothing at all isn't good for a human being. And it's possible because 60 is the new 40. More people will hit 60 still healthy, still sharp, still able to work, for money, for meaning, or because decline feels far off. All reasons are legitimate. Raising the retirement age, China recently moved men from 60 to 63, isn't an attack. It's arithmetic. But that's the least interesting part. The real work is redefining what a career looks like. A longer career isn't a single climb, just stretched. It has more phases, more interruptions, more restarts. Some breaks you'll choose, sabbaticals, pivots. Some you won't, caring for aging parents, layoffs, industry restructuring. Staying employable across 50 years requires actively maintaining 4 things: physical health, skills, relationships, and a clear sense of purpose. None maintain themselves. 2 forms of preparation matter most. Financial preparation. Money buys you the ability to transition, to take a year off, a pay cut, a risk. Lifelong learning. Not a course, a habit. The 3-stage life: learn, work, retire is dead. Its replacement: more phases, more frequent breaks, shorter average hours, more total working years, and a far heavier demand to keep learning. 4-day weeks, longer holidays taken during your working life, not hoarded for the end. In exchange, you retire later and spend those extra years healthy. You're not trading leisure for work. You're redistributing leisure across your whole life instead of dumping it all at the end, when you may be too sick to use it. Part 4. The downhill road nobody trained you for. A longer career sounds great. In practice, ageism makes it brutally hard. In China, there's a specific version. They call it the 45 anxiety. 45 is a wall for middle managers. Young people can do the job for less. Fixing this takes change on 2 sides: the individual and the institution. Start with you. You must learn to manage a career that goes down as well as up. The traditional story is a straight line skyward. It's a lie. Almost everyone plateaus. After the plateau comes the descent. In an evergreen society, that road gets much longer. Your motivation at 25 is not your motivation at 55. When retirement was a cliff, the downhill stretch was short enough to endure. When it's a 20-year process, endurance fails. You need patience, resilience, and Scott's most humane idea, the recognition that not everything declines with age, and not everything that declines matters. Going downhill is normal, most of the map. What must change is that we stop making people walk it alone. And if that sounds abstract, try this. Think about the person 2 levels above you. Now ask yourself what happens to them at 55. Because that's your map. Then the institutional side. Work itself must be redesigned. For manual jobs, build real pathways into less physically demanding roles. For white-collar work, offer autonomy, flexible hours, control over workload. Notice, this is the retirement process in action. More urgent is solving employment before retirement age, beating ageism. Scott argues this policy matters more than raising the retirement age, yet almost nobody talks about it. Raising the age is easy to legislate. Fixing ageism forces companies to change how they think. And here's what they're getting wrong. A younger person may have more raw creative output, that's real. But teams aren't individuals. The most productive combination for generating new ideas is mixing young researchers with senior employees. Not a room full of 25-year-olds. Cross-generational collaboration is a primary engine of innovation. Older workers bring experience and often greater empathy with teammates, with customers. The corporate pyramid is dying too. When the population becomes a cruise ship, the org chart mirrors it. Companies will be evenly distributed across ages. Young people leading older people will be normal. Older people who've passed their peak will need to step down from leadership without stepping out, which means inventing roles that don't exist yet. Roles for the descent. Part 5. The pension math everyone is afraid of. Most countries run pay-as-you-go pensions. Today's workers fund today's retirees. That makes the support ratio the thing everyone panics about. 3 workers for every retiree. Then 2. Then 1. A multi-stage life helps, older people paying in, not just drawing out. But the trend is undeniable. More old people, fewer young ones. That's straightforwardly unfair to the young. So what do? Accept the trend. Moving to a cruise ship means the support ratio falls. What we can change is how we think about the fix. Idea 1, working longer is not enough. Simply extending careers and delaying retirement won't solve the economic challenge alone. Solving it requires longer careers and continuous productivity gains at every age, especially among older workers. Raising older worker productivity is a systems problem. If productivity rises fast enough, it compensates for the falling headcount. The young person paying in today doesn't have to wonder if anyone will be behind them. Idea 2. We need today's young people to become the healthiest generation in human history. If they are, their dependence on the pension system drops dramatically. They'll have both the capacity and the desire to keep working. Solving aging isn't about caring for the old people who already exist. It's about changing what everyone believes, starting with the young. Part 6. Ageism is prejudice against your future self. Every generation thinks it's smarter than the one before and wiser than the one after. Partly true, partly nonsense. Timing creates heroes. China's reform and opening rewarded those born in the 60s and 70s. Someone born in the 90s looks at housing prices and reads the arithmetic correctly. Scott says 3 markers distinguish a generation: the birth cohort, the era's technology, and the resulting values. The technology marker is why anyone born after the year 2000 gets called a digital native. The smartphone didn't just give them a tool, it gave them a different set of instincts. Because technology accelerates, young people will have far more opportunity to be healthy and long-lived. There will be far more cross-generational collaboration. And that demands the deepest attitude shift of all. Ageism is prejudice against your future self. Aging doesn't belong to old people. It belongs to you. How you treat older workers now, the age-friendly mechanisms you build, are the exact mechanisms that will apply to you. We're all walking the same direction. We just started at different times. Young people need to be reminded. They will age in a completely different way than anyone before them. They must prepare to actually use a longer, healthier life. Scott argues education on aging is badly insufficient. Young people must get better at 2 things: handling being old because they'll be old for longer than any generation in history, and changing their behavior while aging because a long life guarantees more transitions. Career isn't a climb anymore. There will be more stops, more turns, and a much longer road down. AI only magnifies this. Preparing for a diversified future is not optional. Find your strengths, find what you enjoy, and think beyond your current job skills. What is this role teaching you that might matter in a transition 10 years from now? Scott says every young person should ask 3 questions. First, is my industry in decline? Second, is my current job age-friendly? Could I comfortably do it for decades? Third, if I continue on this exact path, can I see myself becoming boring and stale? Answer honestly and your career plan sharpens. Answer dishonestly and you'll find out anyway, just later and more expensively. Closing. As populations age and birth rates fall, society's mental picture must shift from pyramid to cruise ship. When most people live long and stay healthy, every age bracket ends up roughly the same size. That forces us to truly break the 3-stage life, replacing it with something messier and better. A life with more pauses and turns, where retirement stops being a date and becomes a gradual transition. That's an evergreen society. Now the 3 questions answered. Do we have enough money? Not if the pension system doesn't change. Enough requires longer working lives, continuously rising productivity, and real innovation. The money isn't sitting somewhere waiting. It has to be created. Will we be able to find work across a longer career? Under current logic, no, not easily. Society must deliberately build age-friendly jobs. Organizations must recognize that mixed-age teams generate more innovation. And each of us needs a new framework for managing a career, including the long descent. What should young people do differently? This is the clearest answer. Aging isn't an old person's issue. It's young people who most need to change how they think, because they'll be healthier and live longer than any generation before them, and because they still have decades to prepare. An evergreen society will generate enormous demand for things nobody has built yet. So here's the question I genuinely want you to answer. Look at the job you have right now, not the company, the actual work. Could you still be doing it at 65? If the answer is no, that's not a reason to panic. It's a reason to start. The pyramid took 100 years to become a cruise ship. You don't get 100 years to figure out which deck you're on.